Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Today's episode is with my buddy Nate Tutas. Traditionally, we talk about how to think differently about sales. In today's episode, I want to focus on the emails process that he's got going. It's called reflections. If you want to get better at whatever role you are trying to focus on in your life, it might be being a better husband, it might be being a better father, it might be being a better entrepreneur, be a better leader, maybe just be a better manager. Whatever that is, this reflections program is going to help you think differently about that role and what you can do to make improvements, little improvements on a regular basis. He's really just focusing on helping you think a little differently. So it ties in perfectly with the Think Differently theme. It's a no cost, no free. You spend 3 minutes reading through this and you think about things differently. So, and we get into what it is, why he's done it. It's really his success philosophy. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, and strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. So Nate, welcome back to the program. Appreciate you taking some time. I know you're missing a mastermind group.
Yeah, no, appreciate the opportunity to come back on the show, and always happy to contribute.
So let's dive into this. I've been paying attention to what you're doing. We're actually doing some things together, but I've been paying attention to what you're doing, and you've come up with a I'm going to call it a program. You'll probably call it something else. But I think it speaks to a way for people to understand how you think, a way to your approach to life and to business and to the whole package. And when I was talking to our friend Brian the other day, I said, you're the most disciplined guy that I know. And whenever I think of an issue, I was like, what would Nate do? Right? Sort of that. Spin on the bracelets with what would Jesus do? Not that we're putting you.
I wouldn't quite put me in that category.
Well, he's got longer hair and a beard.
True.
And he wears a lot of sandals. So can we talk a little bit about reflections, and you kind of explain what it is? We're going to have in the show notes a way for people to engage with it. But can we just talk a little bit about what it is and why somebody should sign up and who that person is?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, who should sign up, who should be interested in it is really anybody that wants to follow someone that's on the entrepreneurial journey, that is leveraging neurolinguistic programming for both the entrepreneurial side of things, parenting, and then just life in general. So I started...
Spousing.
What's that?
Spousing, marriage.
Yes. So I started the whole process kind of off of an idea of Marcus Aurelius's meditations and how he would share his thoughts on the day, on his philosophy and whatnot. And so I took that and turned it into a more modern term for myself, which is just reflections, and reflecting back on the day and reflecting on the way that I apply my success philosophy that I've developed over the years to entrepreneurship, to being a dad, to being a husband, and everything that goes along in between.
So that pretty much speaks to anyone who is not comfortable with the status quo. It's anybody who really wants to be thinking about what they can do to improve their life or the lives around them. It could be a leader, it could be somebody in your family, business.
Yep.
So that, I mean, it's not everybody. Some people are really just happy to be showing up for the job, punching the clock and do their thing and go home and, do whatever it is that they do, work on their car, drink beer, watch television,
yep.
Or take their kids to go play baseball. And that's what they're comfortable with. I guess that's fine. So let's talk a little bit about what people are going to get, how it works. I've I've been intrigued by. I've learned stuff about you and your thinking that I've known you a long time, and I'm still like, oh, I didn't know that. So why don't you dive in? Because people are going to understand this at a certain level, and it layers on itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to kind of go back to where it started and sharing those reflections, one of my goals and objectives, selfishly and openly, and I share this when you first subscribe to Reflections, the first welcome email you get kind of lays this out on the table. But my hope and my goal is to add value to people by helping them to think differently about the way they're approaching entrepreneurship, the way they're approaching sales, the way they're approaching coaching, the way they're approaching leadership, kind of the triumvirate that I've talked about on here before, but then also how it applies to analogies in relation to parenting and, being a better husband and those kinds of things. But the goal, selfishly, is that all the big gurus out there will tell you that you should be sending daily emails. But I think, and you and I have talked about this before, a lot of those daily emails end up just becoming part of the noise. They just end up becoming a series of sales pitches over time that are all designed basically just to get you to buy something, because they know percentage wise their list is big enough. Eventually a certain percentage will click through and they'll get an order. And my goal is really to kind of change that. I think Ryan Holiday is doing a great job of this with the Daily Stoic and the Daily Dad, where he's sending out daily valuable content. There are pitches in that where he's pitching you his challenge coins and different courses and things like that. But the main goal is to really crack the code, right? Codebreaker Academy. That's kind of what my whole course is about. But it's really breaking the code on daily emails to provide value to others by simply challenging them to think differently about some of the things that I'm reflecting on each day.
And it becomes a daily email, but it's speaking to a different topic. The folks are going to be, if they engage with it, it takes 3 minutes to read through it. Take as long as you want to think about it. But it's not it's not about the same thing every day. You go in a lot of different directions.
Mm-hmm.
that are tied together with a thread,
mm-hmm.
but they're in a variety of directions, right?
Correct. Yeah. And that's part of using my philosophy for success that I've kind of developed over the years. And really in writing this, it's actually helped me to articulate it more in a much more finite point. And one of my challenges as the writer is I try to keep all of them at 500 words or less. So I think it was Mark Twain who said I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have time. Right. And so one of the things with that is I kind of string certain thoughts together. So you'll get one portion of the thought in one email, and then you'll get the next portion of the thought in the next email, and the next portion, the next email. So they kind of string together, and then I'll change the thought of what I'm actually talking about. So I might be talking about sales, and you might get 3 or 4 emails on sales, and then I'll switch to how I'm reflecting now on leadership and how sales and leadership tie together in a way. So it varies, but the topics are all succinct, or at least I hope they are.
No, I think there is, because if you see enough of them, you start to see a thread that goes through that ties everything together. Mm-hmm. And it's about how we look at things. It's our perspective. It's how we think about it. It's our mindset in the moment. And what was interesting to me is that you can apply it to wherever you are that day. Mm-hmm. So you might be talking about sales, and the person reading it might be a CEO of a company or own the business, and the topic about how you work with your child actually applies to you working with your team, because there's so much overlap in that. Not that employees are children and teams are children, but it's how we look at that and how we go about trying to lead and trying to sell. Those are common threads. Mm-hmm. It really helps. You get out of it what you put into it. And if you put 3 minutes in and look at it and think, yeah, okay, and then you move on, that day that you might not get much out of it. But if one just strikes a chord with you, Um, what I've started to do, and I don't know, maybe I'm doing this wrong, but I'll take a couple of those and I put them into a folder, and then one of the days, like I go and I'm going to sit there and read these things that get me in a space, right? Your stuff is similar to something else that I do that just makes me think. And one of them I sit at the beginning of the day, and one of them I sit at the end of the day, so that I can have different intentions as I go from my office to my house to go, have conversations with my wife and have dinner and, deal with, trying to be less of a dick at home and be more supportive. And because I have that problem everywhere I go. But I think that becomes part of it for me, is that I'm using it as a thing to help me think about it. And when I put the string together, maybe that's how I saw it. It's like, oh, this applies here. And then like, oh, there's something different here. But there was a thought that carried through 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So you did that on purpose.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of what in neurolinguistic programming we would refer to as opening loops. So I'm opening loops in certain emails and leaving them open so that the subconscious mind starts to think and ponder about that. And then I'm closing them in other emails. So that's all done with intention to open and close those loops, because that's really how the brain learns. The subconscious mind starts focusing on these things for an extended period of time. And as long as that loop is left open, the brain is searching for an answer and a response. And whether the individual like yourself come up with that answer on your own when you're walking into the house and going, oh, that's how that connects, or whether it's me actually intentionally and physically closing the loop myself in another email down the road, that's all part of that process.
Well, it also applies to coaching leaders, coaching salespeople, coaching baseball teams.
Yep.
Is getting somebody to think about things differently. When I've been coached, no matter what, if it's an athletic thing or professionally, or just coaching from a mentor relationship where somebody's trying to help me, get better, there's those what I call aha moments. And it's like, oh, I get it. If I'm trying to swing a golf club and I'm not in an athletic position, too far back, too far forward, like that, it's how that's supposed to feel. And that's when you get that moment, that's closing the loop. And sometimes you get help doing that. And sometimes you just do it on your own when you're out. So is that similar to what I was taught years ago? If you ask yourself in the morning, like you're taking a shower or shaving or combing your hair or, whatever you do with your hair, if you ask yourself a shitty question, your brain will do what it can to answer that question. But if we're not careful about the questions we ask ourselves, we can take ourselves in the wrong direction without even knowing.
Correct. Yeah. The brain likes closure, right, on anything. And so when you ask it a question, it starts searching for the answer. And what happens is a system inside the brain that's known as the reticular activating system gets activated. So that's the same system. The RAS is the same system that when you go out and you buy a car and you think no one else has this car, it's brand new, I'm the only one that's got this color, this make, this model, and you drive off the lot and all of a sudden you see 5 of them drive by and you're like, what? How did that happen? That's the RAS working, because now it's going, oh, now we notice it because something in our brain told us that was important, which was usually when you purchased the vehicle or when you took it for a test drive or whatever that is. So the same thing happens on a much more minute scale. When you ask yourself a question, your brain starts working through the process of finding the answer for that. And it just so happens I literally, maybe 10 minutes before we hopped on this call, just got done writing one of the resources I'm creating for people that subscribe to Reflections, which is my journaling process and notating down how that works. And a lot of my journaling process actually starts preparing today the night before. And a lot of the reasoning for that is as you're going through and asking yourself questions and journaling about that, it's preparing the subconscious mind so that while you're sleeping, your brain is actually already looking for answers. Isaac Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, a number of those famous inventors were actually known for taking naps during the day because they would ask themselves a question when they couldn't figure out the answer. The solution for them was to fall asleep. The solution was just fall asleep and let the subconscious mind come up with the answer, and they'd wake up and go, huh, that's what it is. That's what I was supposed to be doing, because the brain can process so much more when we kind of get our conscious mind out of the way.
Yeah, because we're not trying to put other inputs there, right? Mm-hmm. The brain is kind of free to go in the direction it was you gave it intent to, whether you're consciously realizing you did it or if you didn't. Yep. You're opening up that loop, and that's one of the things that when I was younger, and it's something I do differently now, but I used to have Post-it notes when it was just my bathroom mirror in the morning, right? Nobody mm-hmm. else saw it. Yep. I could have certain Post-it notes about questions I wanted to ask. Those questions got rotated around, but there were always one or two that were constant. And I would see that in the morning and I would see it at night. And like for some people, they could go take a nap. Other people, it's like, I'm going to put all this stuff down and I'm going to go out into the woods and go for a walk mm-hmm. and just be there, not thinking about it. And when I've done that, what's interesting is you become aware of things that you've walked down this path 100 times, but all of a sudden there's something you see that's always been there, not just a weird bird. It's a post or a tree or some kind of immovable object that's like, I never noticed that, or a house, right? Mm-hmm. And it's almost like you've kind of like gave yourself some space to see, right? Yep. Whether you're meditating, right? Is that how? So finding that way to open up your brain and doing it with the right intent is something that people will walk away from. This, it's not a program. How are you referring to it?
It's just a daily email on my reflections. That's really all it is. It's you could call it a daily newsletter. It's not really a newsletter because I'm not sharing news. I'm literally just sharing my reflections and how I go about thinking about things.
It's a lot of work.
It is. It's been a fun process though, because like I said, I'm really working on cracking the code on delivering value to people on a daily basis, and that takes thought, that takes reflection on how you actually deliver that value, and it's really forced me to share a lot of things that I've learned over the years from various different sources, from whether that was the Marine Corps. I shared one the other day, and I'm far enough ahead with these that I'm writing them well in advance, so I'm not even sure if it's posted yet, but I shared one the other day reflecting on my mom. And my mom's the youngest of 5 and I'm the youngest of 4. And she did a great job with me of always kind of putting her arm around me when a sibling would screw up or a cousin would do this, or could be good things, could be bad things, but she would see things in the environment and she would kind of grab and say, because you're younger, that's not a disadvantage. That's actually a massive advantage. And it's because you can see that, learn from it, and learn the positive and negative side of it. So what actions did that individual take that led them to this point in their life? What are the ramifications of that, either, positive impacts or negative implications of what they just did and how they made that decision? And that's really given me kind of to, no pun intended, but that reflective state as an individual, having 3 older siblings where I kind of grew up with that. And now that's, I refer to it as one of my superpowers, that I can look at something that someone else has done and go, oh, I can see 37 other applications for that and do it this way, that way, the other way, to make it have value and to make it have worth, so that it's not just something that was done once, but it's something that can be replicated over and over again to deliver value.
Hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. And that speaks to the overall philosophical thing that I think you've got that created in your mind and you're trying to share it. But as you go through this process, because you're learning to write differently, you're learning to write in a not really a formulaic, but in a way that crystallizes your ideas with the right message and the right tone and the right amount of words. So I mean, that's a forcing yourself to do this because you're trying to help people. Great, but some ancillary benefits is that you get better at writing, communicating with the written word, and that I think is something that right now is a challenge for a lot of people, because of the short form texting, because of the way emails are structured. Your quote from Mark Twain, I didn't have time to write a shorter letter. I mean, it does. It's brevity, clarity, and unity is a difficult thing to approach because we have drafts. The last speech I did, I had to go on stage. I literally had 37 revisions. I marked them each time, and some were significant and some weren't, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I also try to do with these is I try not to put a ton of editing into them. I try to write it first time as best I can. I'll go back and make grammatical changes if I need to, or, I write it in Google Docs, and Google Docs does a great job of being like, hey, you missed an S here. You need to change that there. But I do my best to write it first time with very minimal editing, because I know there's a lot of writers that'll say, write something one day, then come back to it the next day and reread it, and then go back and change it again. Well, for me, that's highly edited, which might be good for the reader to a certain extent, but part of my process is getting to the point where I can write those things first time and have very little editing and put them out there. So,
but I think it matters what you're writing, right? That the process you describe.
Yeah,
if you're writing a novel or if you're writing manual, that's different.
These are individuals I know that are writing a weekly newsletter, that the newsletter's, 1,200 words, and they're taking 3-4 days to write it. And for me personally, as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I have a newsletter, but I'm not in the newsletter business. That isn't like my main source of revenue. So for me, it's like, get the idea, get the concept down, get it out there, figure out how to have brevity and clarity around it, and put it out there in the ether, and then adapt and iterate. That kind of goes into my success philosophy a little bit.
You getting a lot of feedback?
Are you talking audio feedback, or are you talking feedback regarding
outside of are you getting feedback on reflections about how it's landing with people, how it's impacting?
Yeah, from I'd say probably about 50% of the people that I have on the list so far have provided responses at one point or the other, and all the responses have been really positive and really great, which has been really helpful for me, because I've gotten feedback similar to what you're sharing of. It's caused them to think in a certain way. It's caused them to kind of challenge their way of thinking in different areas and tying those things together. So,
well, it's thinking differently, but it's thinking about like, well, if that works here, it works over here, and this is the same thing. So it forces you to see the continuity of like, wow, this thing goes through my whole life, my whole interactions, all of my relationships. So, so in the show notes for this episode, we'll have the link in there. It's pretty simple. It's your website with /reflections. I'm also going to put in the newsletter piece. So you want to like take 2 minutes and describe what's in the newsletter and how that's different?
Yeah, so a completely separate animal, so to speak, that I've been working on is my Code Breaker newsletter. So that is really written specifically for B2B sales consultants and then NLP coaches that are looking to break the code or crack the code on their market. And anybody that's looking to better understand marketing and better understand how to crack the code on their market, it would be good for. But that's really designed around, I have 7 kind of core pillars that I talk about, and each week is a different pillar that I'm kind of diving into, and then those will repeat. So I've already got that mapped out for the course of the entire year. And right now, this week, number 6 just posted on the 7 pillars. So next week will be the 7th, and then we'll rotate back through the various different iterations. But that covers everything from understanding your avatar and who it is you're attracting, how you provide value to those individuals, how you create traffic with those individuals, all that different kind of stuff.
So there's some real, and I know we're friends, so and I'm a little bit biased, but I'm also pretty honest, and I think there's value in here for anybody that really wants to get better at whatever the hell they're doing. Because if you start to think about things in a little bit different way, and you do it a little bit here and a little bit there, at the end of a period of time, quarter, year, you will notice changes that if you're trying to make positive changes, you'll notice changes, and they impact as you keep adding to them. So I recommend any of the listeners to go take a peek at this and engage with it for a couple of weeks and see what they walk away with.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it really boils down to the success philosophy that I've kind of just in the last 3 emails, 26, 27, 28. Really just kind of started laying out and detailing for people, which my success philosophy kind of boils down to 3 very basic words. But there's a lot of depth to the words themselves, and it's direction, it's adaptation, and it's iteration. If you can develop a direction for yourself that's focused around, Napoleon Hill would have called it your definitive purpose. Other people have called it your life's mission. And making sure that those things actually include one thing I think Hill kind of misses, but it's evident in society if you just think about what the core markets in the world are. You've got health, wealth, and relationships are the 3 core markets. And if you build that as part of your mission for life, where it is that you're trying to get to, and then you point yourself in that direction and you're focused on moving that direction continuously, you find ways to adapt. You figure out and you put things in your system, in your way of thinking, in your mind, so that you can figure out what's working, what's not working, what adaptations do I need to make. You make those adaptations, and then you simply iterate. And as Ogmandino says, I think it's the 3rd law of success, I will persist until I succeed. You continue iterating until you are successful. And just like a GPS, you have that endpoint, which is that mission, that goal in life. The goals and the objectives that we have in business or in life, whether that be as a parent, as a father, as an entrepreneur, those become the milestones and the checkpoints that the GPS is using to figure out, are we on track? Are we moving the right direction? Or have we gotten off course? And now the system needs to recalculate, make an adaptation, and adjust us back on the course so that we can iterate and get back in the direction that we're trying to move. And that's really what all of that boils down to.
And I think, those are solid, the especially with the direction and which one of those 3 we want to focus on. But realizing along the way that things are going to go sideways and they're not always going to work. And some of the things that don't work are some of the best things ultimately that occur to us. Mm-hmm. Where we learn, like that's not the right way to go, and we need to go over here. So, and there's a little bit of your Marine Corps training in that philosophy too, right?
Yeah, a little bit of what we would refer to as land nav.
Yeah, but there's value there for everybody if they want to receive it. If they don't want to receive it, then maybe it's just something they keep feeding their brain with, and one day when they're open to it, it happens. Mm-hmm. I think that's I think we've established that it's something that people should go check out, and that was my objective here. So and we can start to have conversations around this where we talk about it from leadership perspective. We can talk about it from a sales perspective, because it all is intertwined. It's all together.
Yep. Yeah, and one of the biggest things to touch on, just as far as how that all intertwines, is the difference between thinking about directional thinking versus endpoint thinking, I refer to it as. So a lot of times in sales, or as a business, we'll think about the endpoints that we want to get to, right? We'll think about, and the endpoint won't be the mission of the company. The endpoint will be, well, this quarter we want to hit, 30 million in revenue, or whatever the endpoint is. But the challenge for the brain is that that's not directional. So when you get to 30 million, the brain's sitting there kind of going, okay, now what? We've all heard the stories of famous athletes who made it to the pinnacle of their career. They won the Super Bowl, or they won the NBA title, or they won whatever it was. And all of a sudden their life fell apart. And the reason for that is because they never told their brain what's next. They never focused on, I'm not just becoming the best athlete in the world. I'm becoming the best athlete that not only wins one title, but then goes on and challenges myself to win another and another and another. And that's one of the things that Jordan was so great at. He didn't focus just on winning the title. He looked at it and said, no, I'm going to be the best basketball player that's ever existed, which means I'm not just going to win one, I'm going to win multiple. So as soon as I'm done, and I think Jordan, I'm sure, has similar stories, but there's a famous story about Kobe where the Lakers had won the NBA Finals, and all of his teammates were about to go out and party. And he said, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to start preparing for the next title. And I think it was like he took like all of 30 minutes to celebrate, and then went back out on the court and started making more jump shots.
I mean, and I get that. And I think there's enough written about Jordan to talk about, or to understand that he still had fun.
Oh, yeah.
Part of fun for him was the exercise of practice and getting better. Mm-hmm. Like he made that part of his of the process, was that he needed to do this to be there. So that the part of his goal was to do the work, and the goal itself would take care of itself if he did the right amount of work.
Right.
Preparation. I had a conversation with a salesperson today, and that you are going to meetings with prospects unprepared. And he was, like, you've never listened to one of my prospecting calls or one of my discovery calls. How do you know that? And because you're not prepared for these meetings. Mm-hmm. When we get together, you're ill prepared. You haven't done the work. And so that tells me you're not being prepared internally or externally, and you're flying by the seat of your pants, and you got assless chaps on, and it's very unattractive and unprofessional. Mm-hmm. And so I think it has to do with everything. So that philosophy applies everywhere. Mm-hmm. And if we can start to think about it and start to apply it, life is can only improve. Mm-hmm. All right, sir. Thank you. I appreciate the time. I think this was some, part of this is for me to have fun, and the other part of it is to add value to the audience. And hopefully we did that.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
I love sharing secrets when I figure them out. That's why I created this program called Sales Hiring Secrets. Early in my sales management career, I was terrible at hiring salespeople. They failed more often than not. Then I discovered the secret that you can't hire salespeople the same way you hire everyone else. That's why everyone fails. In Sales Hiring Secrets, I'm going to teach you all of the secrets to understanding what you really need your salesperson to do, how to attract an ideal candidate with a unique job posting. I'll teach you how to save time and money by only interviewing candidates that are a good fit. I'll share the secrets to an interviewing process that ensures success. And the one big secret that everybody gets wrong is how to onboard a good salesperson so they ramp up quickly and stick around. I'm doing the Sales Hiring Secrets program on a monthly basis. You can click the link below to figure out when the next Sales Hiring Secrets program is scheduled, and you can sign up. Click the link below and you get all the details. And it's designed for you to bring your entire team so you can get everybody up to speed quickly. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you on the other side.